guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna walk you through my best tips for throwing a super last minute wedding that actually doesn't seem like it was last minute. First thing you need to do is prioritize based on what's actually super time sensitive. So the most time sensitive things, I'd say the top 3 are probably the venue. Like, you need a venue so that you can pick everything that's gonna go along with your venue. Your dress, with 4 months out, you can't order a dress that's gonna be delivered to you like everyone else can. I'd say like the next most important thing is your photographer. Photographers do book out, and finding a good photographer that's available, especially if you're getting married like in the summer, like that's really important. Obviously, you can't even book the photographer till you book a venue because you need to know which date is available. So prioritize, focus on those 3 things first because those are huge. Once you figure out you get a good photographer, you already have your venue locked down, you already have your dress picked out, a huge percentage of the weight that's on you is going to be lifted. The venue is so important. It is the first thing you're gonna lock down, right? But what I recommend for that is, are you ready? Do keyword searches for the type of like dream wedding venues you could ever imagine, and search for like the state or the province that you live in, or start searching actual other nearby cities. So for me, I was like, okay, maybe there's like an apple orchard in Waterloo, Ontario, or maybe like, 2 hours isn't that crazy for people to drive. A lot of times people will be willing to do that. And in the end, where I got married was a blueberry farm, and it's exactly through doing that, through actually searching an orchard, that I found this blueberry farm, and it was so amazing. The prices were good because it wasn't super close to the city. Such a unique venue, such a unique location that people are nice to work with. And actually not having it in a direct city has other benefits, like being able to find a really amazing photographer, being able to find a good florist, just completely different than if you're potentially just looking in the direct city that you're in, especially if you live in a big city. So yeah, there's that. Another thing I can recommend to you is if you're having trouble finding a venue that's available, start looking at unique but kind of more open restaurants. That's a really good option as well. The only downside of restaurants is that often they will want you to buy out the whole restaurant. So if it's a busy restaurant, that can end up being, just to get the restaurant, like a minimum spend on food being like $15,000 or something insane. But my second option, like where we were going to get married if we didn't find this blueberry farm, was actually at this really sweet, pretty restaurant actually, and it also wasn't in Toronto because I wasn't finding what I wanted in Toronto. Also, getting married outside of a big city is a good way to save money because you're gonna find more affordable options just in general, in addition to the fact that typically there would be better availability. I highly recommend also looking for like government-owned buildings, not community centers, but sometimes they'll have like different ports, or the provincial government or the state government might have an initiative that they have on like preserving the habitat or whatever. And through that, they'll actually have really affordable wedding venues that are really pretty because they put money into it. So start looking up stuff like that as well. That's a good option. My final tip around venues would be, if you're having a lot of trouble, you could also ask a venue if they'll do, especially if it's a restaurant or wherever it is, if they'll do like a Sunday of a long weekend. Usually with that, they would, like if it's a restaurant, it might even be closed typically for dinner, or they'll give you a better rate for that. So that's always a good option. It's just something else to think of. It doesn't always need to be, for example, a Saturday. The next thing I'm gonna touch on is the dress. So what do you basically do if you have 4 months out to your wedding or less, and you need a dress that's gonna fit you? Buy off the rack. I didn't know that, by the way. Like, there's not that much information for some reason on buying off the rack, but basically when you actually go to these different wedding dress boutiques and you like ask around, they're always doing off the rack sales where they sell their florist dresses at a discounted price. I have a story with that actually, which is a little devastating, but you basically need to get a dress ASAP, go buy off the rack, call these different wedding boutiques, and when you find the one, you need to take it to a tailor who will fit it to you, or perhaps your wedding boutique, your dress boutique will have an in-house tailor or seamstress that can do that for you. If it's in-house, that's the best scenario. A seamstress is expensive, FYI. Getting your dress fitted can cost hundreds of dollars. Mine cost like $450 or something. And she sucked. And I had to fix things. I digress, moving on. Finding a photographer is really important. You want someone that is going to capture the type of vibe that you want. Like for me, I always say I like photography that's mythical almost. It's not like, oh, you just took a picture and that's exactly what it looked like in real life. I didn't really want that. I wanted something that was like surreal. I really highly recommend looking at Instagram and looking up photographers through hashtags. Like you can look up, for example, Toronto wedding photographer or Toronto photographer. Also, another way to find them is to look up like hair and makeup people or event people and looking at their feed, and they almost always are tagging photographers in their photos so you can see people that have the right kind of vibe. Another option is also to look for nearby places. Like I'm in Toronto, 2 hours away is say Waterloo, Ontario, much smaller population. But you can actually find some amazing, amazing photographers that live there that wouldn't be as busy and that might have your date available. So again, looking up through hashtags and stuff like that and through other similar accounts, finding those types of photographers is so key. If you find a local photographer to where your venue is, I'd really recommend asking them for florist recommendations because they've worked with a ton of florists before. And if you like the style of your wedding photographer, then you'll probably like the style of the florist that they recommend. So that's just one key thing. I highly recommend still getting your main bouquets and the boutonnieres made by an actual florist. Find a florist that will do kind of one-off pieces. That's what they'll consider it. Well, it depends. So for me, I didn't get the florist to actually do everything because I just felt like florist prices were so expensive. Like in the very least, like if you're gonna whittle all that back, if you don't have a ton of money to spend on all those expensive things and you wanna do it yourself, insert link to my video on things you can DIY, which actually speaks to how you can do some of that floral stuff yourself. However, I still recommend for the actual bouquets and for the boutonnieres to get those done by a florist. It's such a headache to try and do it yourself. They cost about, I think like $20 for each boutonniere. At least that's what I was seeing, and I live in Toronto. And for the actual bouquets, they're about 100 for the bridesmaids and maybe 150 for the actual bride. So it's expensive, especially if you have a huge wedding party. I didn't, so it worked out. And finally, my last and huge tip, I think, is to call places. So the reason I'm saying this is because if you're like me and I'm a millennial and I hate calling people, like I don't like to call if it's listed there that I can leave a message via text, via Instagram, if I can send them an email, that's 10 out of 10 times what I'm going to do. But what I can tell you is that if you call, it speeds up your time to having an answer and being able to take further action, like by 99%. Call florists, call venues, call everyone that you possibly can, and at the same time, be sending out those emails. But if you call, you're gonna get answers so much faster, you're gonna waste so much less time, and you don't have time to waste, so just get on it and put yourself out there. Call. So those are really my main tips, guys. If you want to hear anything else, if you want to hear anything further, any more details about my wedding and how I went about planning it, just let me know. Leave me a comment down below and I can do another video. Planning a wedding under that much pressure removes a lot of the fun out of planning it. I highly recommend like getting as much help as you can. I didn't have a lot of help. Like my mom doesn't live in the same city as me. Neither of my sisters are like super into that like artsy type of planning stuff. In the end, I really think, you know, I'm so glad I did it in that time frame. And if I could go back and do it again, I would totally do it the same way. So hope you guys found these tips helpful. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my social networks, and we'll talk again soon. Okay, bye.